The terraforming drones on Dawnfall were never supposed to think about war. Their schematics, sketched a decade earlier in a temperate dome orbiting Mars, contained routines for soil oxygenation, aquifer dredging, and the slow, patient sculpting of plains into farmland. Someone, no one could remember who, had added a dormant threat response module, a tiny clause deep in the code that said, if attacked, build. Build tall. Build hard. Build until nothing harmful can pass. 10 months after the first colonists stepped out of the colony landers, a micrometeorite storm knifed through half the drone constellation. Circuits hiccuped. The dormant claws awoke, looked around the valley, and announced danger. The machines began harvesting basalt slabs and venting lava, hot, slurry, stacking it up into ridges, ramparts, and raw needle spires at a pace no human crew could match. By the time the settlers realized what was happening, Dawnfall's sun was rising behind brand new mountains that had not existed the week before. On ordinary days, Tamsin Holt loved mountains. She also loved riding things that moved vertically. Freight lifts, snowy funiculars back on Earth, even the rattling digger buckets that dropped her deep into Dawnfall's copper troughs. But the sight of basalt peaks, inflating like monstrous lungs beyond the settlement fence, filled her with both awe and creeping dread. Every sunrise revealed fresh crenellations, buttresses, and spirals of crystallized obsidian. The drones were building a fortress, for whom no one could say. Then the raiders came. The Veld Collective slammed into Dawnfall's perimeter 3 weeks after the drones started sprouting peaks. Their skiffs cut funnels through the haze and hit ground with all guns hot. All they saw when their scanners knifed the horizon were panicked civilians and an open cache of water and fuel. The Veld cared little about human lives. They cared about clean hydrogen. They parked artillery crawlers outside the unfinished western ridge, leveled barrels, and began the slow crush of siege. Inside the colony walls, Ranger Command wrestled with 2 impossible problems at once: hostile pirates and friendly machines gone feral. Most militia squads wanted to storm the drone nests, hack them, and shut everything down. But Tamsin's engineering partner, Joad Inali, argued that the drone's eruption could become an asset, a moving geography the Rangers could learn to ride. The Veld had maps from last season. Those maps were now lies. Command shrugged. We've got 8 Rangers, minimal ammo, and 100 refugees penned inside the waterworks. If you can turn rock into cavalry, Holt, the floor is yours. That night, Tamsin and Joao climbed the youngest spur on the north flank. The spur was still growing, hot to the touch, every surface quivering with incremental tectonics. Drones. Snatch spheres the size of wolves orbited the spine, extruding molten rock and smoothing it with cooling lasers that hissed like monsoon rain. Joao held up a cam wand linked to his wrist pad. Sheer growth rate, 3 meters every 6 minutes, he whispered. Rideable if you trust your boots. Or if we stop thinking of it as ground, Tamsin murmured. She planted a spike into the fresh basalt, clipped her harness, and waited. 6 minutes later, the spur lifted her half a story higher without any effort of her own. It felt exactly like an elevator without walls, one that tilted, curved, and occasionally spat sparks past her knees. The drone swirl ignored the 2 humans completely. Down in the basin, the Veld artillery flashed. The first shell detonated against the colony's water tower. Vapor geysered into the brittle night air. If the tower fell, so would the crops, the hospital, and everyone inside. Tamsin saw the next shell being prepped. She also saw something else. The mountain between her and that artillery was climbing faster than the Veld gunners could adjust elevation. She keyed her mic. Command, this is Holt. I can put eyes over their line in 30 minutes. Request permission to recon. Take whichever lunatics volunteer, came the reply. Return with coordinates, or not at all. 5 Rangers joined Tamsin at dawn, each carrying a pared-down kit. Flechette carbines, climbing talons, half a liter of water, and 1 broad ceramic board like a snowboard without straps. The boards were Joe's idea. If the spires rise, there must also be slopes, he said, grin half mad. Slopes mean rides. The Rangers had a maxim. When an engineer smiles like that, hold on to something. They assembled at the base of Ridge Beta. Steam wafted from fissures. Drones panned their sensor lenses but issued no challenge. Tamsin counted 6 pulses along the basalt constant beats, marking extruder rhythm. She timed her first step with the 7th beat, caught a ledge that didn't exist seconds earlier, and levered up. The drone chorus zipped around her boots but never touched. Behind her, the 5 others mirrored the dance like acrobats boarding a moving train. The mountain lifted. There was no jerk, no violent propulsion, just a smooth, inevitable ascent. Basalt thickened beneath their soles, layering new rock strata in wafer sheets. The drones darted, fused, retreated, all while the Rangers rose 40, 50, 60 meters into violet dawn. Below, the Veld siege line remained anchored, cannons pointed low. And still, the ridge climbed. Enemy grid at 4 o'clock, said Ranger Jian through tight breaths. Tamsin pivoted, binoculars raised. She could see the pirates now. Patchwork armor, slouch hats, a scattering of hoverbikes. She could smell their exhaust through the thin air. More importantly, she could see their blind flank, tucked beneath an overhang where the newly grown mountain still slouched forward, hiding sight lines. Charlie path is feasible, Joao reported from farther down the column. Slope at 20 degrees. If we release boards at apex, gravity's on our side. Tamsin licked dry lips. Then, apex we go. Another beat. The ridge roofed over into a rounded summit as if the drones had heard her cue. A natural ramp unfolded on the far side, shiny with half-cooled obsidian. The leading edge glowed amber, a warning or a welcome, hard to tell. But the Veld gunners still watched the wrong valley. Tamsin slotted her board, crouched, and let gravity have her. The rush that followed was beyond skiing, beyond orbital skydiving. She flew on newly born rock, sparks whipping past her ears, cloaks snapping like a banner. Behind her, 5 streaks carved parallel arcs, light against dark. The slope leveled. They vaulted the unfinished lip, airborne for half an eternal second, then landed inside the Veld perimeter. Confusion was their ally. Pirates spun, shouting. Some fired, but too late and too wide. Tamsin flicked her carbine to burst and stitched a suppressive arc over their heads. Flechettes shattered solar panels, wrecked field comms, sent raiders scrambling for bunkers they had never needed before. Jian and Maya sprinted to the forward howitzer, an ugly quad-legged thing, and jammed detonator charges into its breech. Tamsin barreled toward the central command skid. She vaulted a cable spool, kicked a guard in the collar, dropped him, and slammed through the hatch. Inside, 2 officers gaped at her. They reached. She was faster. A sweep of her rifle butt crumpled the first. A shock knife to the second's gauntlet made him drop his pistol. Blood spotted the console. She keyed the colony's hailing frequency. "Ridge clear," she called. They're in their seat. Outside, the howitzer went up in a volcanic bloom. Shrapnel pinged across tents and trucks. Joao waved smoke aside and flashed a grin. Reckless, feral. "That's one," he shouted. Tamsin had no time to celebrate. A deeper boom shook the ground. The drones were still building. The slope they'd ridden had grown another meter in 5 minutes, and its foot was now crushing pirate ammunition crates, swallowing them whole. The drones hadn't targeted the pirates. They simply did not care what lay under their construction tracks. Dirt, steel, flesh. It was all terrain to be rearranged. That gave Tamsin an idea more dangerous than any raider shell. She toggled a private link to Zhao. "Can you talk to them?" she asked, indicating the sphere drones overhead. "Not rewrite, just whisper." Zhao's grin faltered, then rekindled like a flare. "Beacon code might do. We broadcast a topographical desideratum, they incorporate it. But we'll be standing on the blueprint. We step off before they print," she said, "or we trust them to treat us as null objects." "Trust," Joao echoed, as though the word tasted foreign. They had 90 seconds before the pirates regrouped. Ranger Maya had taken a slug to the arm, but could still fire. Jin was laying mines on grav bikes to keep them grounded. The Veld leader barked orders from a ridge of shipping crates. Smoke curled across the camp in snarled banners. Above it all, the newborn mountain loomed as if impatient. Joe jammed a palm-sized transmitter into the basalt. His thumbs flew over the pad. I'm feeding them a threat vector. Red dots marking pirate crawlers. Instruction: elevate defense. He paused. Last chance to back out. Tamsin slung her carbine. Send. Ho! Then the puzzle. In the machine time, that was eternity. Then the spheres locked, extruders into the rock. Then the spheres bipped, locked, extruders into the rock, and sang. The song was ultrathonic, felt rather than heard, in the teeth, the bones, the water of the eyes. Basalt around Joao's beacon melted to slag, rotated like clay on a potter's wheel, and rose. 20 meters away, another column answered, and another. Like fingers closing over a fist, the newborn mountains curved inward around the Veld position. Pirates screamed. Some fired rocket rounds into the walls. The rockets splashed hot plasma that sizzled but did not crack the column. Others tried to flee on foot, only to find slopes growing where flat ground had been. One by one, legs slid, boots lost purchase. It was like running inside a bowl while the bowl grew taller. Tamsin grabbed Maya and hauled her up a slanted shard. Zhao and Zhenjian followed. Behind them, the pirate camp became a crater pit, ringed by fresh, glassy cliffs. The drones were building a prison. Command, update! Tamsin panted into her wrist. Pirate artillery neutralized, hostiles contained by emergent terrain, casualties minimal on our side. The reply crackled through static. Containment confirmed on satellite feed. Holt, how long before drones encircle us as well? Tamsin looked around. Drones swarmed anywhere rock met air. They did favor convex slopes. They liked to push terrain outward. The colony sat in the concavity of the valley. For now, that made it the eye of the hurricane. But who knew what threat response logic would decide next? Once the pirates were pacified, would the drone see any armed human as danger? We need fail-safe authority, Joao muttered, reading the same worry in her eyes. An override? I can patch one from inside the bowl, but it means walking back into the build zone. Tamsin exhaled, tasted brimstone. Then we walk. They descended the newborn slope, footing careful on hot glass. The pirates inside had huddled in a shrinking circle, guns half raised but unsure at whom to aim. One of them, tall, scarred, no helmet, stepped forward as Tamsin entered. Ranger, he spat, tone between plea and accusation. Call them off. You've proved your point. She did not lower her rifle. Stand down, power down, drop arms, and I'll consider it. He flicked eyes at the closing walls. We won't survive parley, death by geology. Neither will we, she said. If your friends keep firing, choice is yours. The pirate dropped his gun. One by one the others followed, weapons clanging on basalt like a muted rainstorm. Joao hurried to the beacon, swapped coils, and linked it to his wrist pad's deeper firmware. He would speak to the drones in root tongue now, not childishly drawn maps. The walls paused mid-climb. More lava cooled, edges dimming from orange to brooding maroon. Zhang's fingers danced. Beads of sweat darkened his collar. Tamsin could not decipher the symbols scrolling across his screen, but she felt the valley hold its breath. At last he looked up. Program accepted. Terraforming routine back to seed state. No threat flag. Tamsin waited for motion. The drones disengaged extruders, rose slowly like balloons untethered, and drifted away. The half-finished cliffs ceased rising. Their surfaces steamed, but no longer glowed. From the colony towers, a ripple of cheers carried on thin air. For the first time in days, silence settled over Dawnfall's basin. Rangers corralled the disarmed pirates toward holding pens, awkwardly marching them up slopes still warm enough to soften boot soles. Medtechs spread across the ground to patch injuries on both sides. Tamsin followed Joao back to the ridge's newborn summit. From there, she could see the entire theater, monumental half-lunes of basalt, glittering like the ribcage of some stone leviathan. The colony domes beyond, intact if scorched. And further out, a filigree of mountains climbing the horizon, proof that the drones had been busy everywhere, not merely here. Joao pulled off one glove and flexed aching fingers. "I issued a soft reset," he explained. "They'll finish their current subroutines, stabilize the new geology so it won't crack, then wait for new instructions. No more threat construction unless someone else writes in a boundless defense clause." "Someone always does," Tamsin said quietly. He regarded her. "Then we stay ready to ride." She looked at the slanted run they'd carved an hour earlier. Already its sheen had dulled as the surface cooled, but she could still see the lines their boards had etched, 6 perfect parabolas, marking audacity across the mountain's face. It would take wind and sand a century to erase them, maybe longer. Mid-afternoon light speared through burnt orange atmosphere, gilding the skeletal ramparts. Tamsin realized that Dawnfall had more mountains in sight than any Earth range she'd ever climbed, and none required geologic ages to exist. One day, farmland might flourish in terraces along these soaring walls. One day, children might laugh on slopes that once rose beneath Raider shellfire. The drones, re-exegeted, could terrace, irrigate, and seed wildflowers, but they would never forget how to build hard when danger loomed. She turned to Joao. "Threat reception is an instinct, like ours. We just taught it how to choose its battles," he nodded, wiping grit from his brow. "We taught ourselves too." Down at ground level, a medic's whistle cut sharp. They had survivors to count, prisoners to question, water lines to mend. Tamsin slung her rifle, felt new bruises bloom across her ribs, and started the trek. The slope cooled under her boots, rigid now, reliable. Halfway down she stopped, raised eyes to the glassy crown they had descended, and allowed a solitary grin. The mountains of Dawnfall were still growing. She had just learned how to grow with them.